In the autumn of 9 AD, Rome stood at the absolute height of its imperial power. Under Emperor Augustus, the empire sought to push its borders deep into untamed Germanic lands. 3 elite legions marched along a narrow, unpaved route through the dense, uncharted wilderness. Over 15,000 legionaries, along with auxiliary troops, moved slowly through the tightening valleys. A massive baggage train of wagons and camp followers stretched the military column for miles. Commanding this massive force was Varus, an aristocratic governor confident in Rome's absolute supremacy.
Riding nearby was Arminius, a trusted Germanic ally who secretly plotted Rome's ultimate destruction.
Having served in the Roman military, Arminius understood their rigid tactics and fatal vulnerabilities. The Roman military machine relied entirely on absolute discipline, tight formations, and engineering supremacy. Every legionary was a professional soldier, armed with standard-issue armor, iron helmets, and deadly gladii. The sacred eagle standard symbolized the undying honor and physical presence of Rome itself. Yet, their heavy equipment made them highly dependent on open terrain and dry, solid roads. Deep within the shadows of the forest, a different kind of army was quietly gathering. A diverse coalition of independent tribes united under a single, highly coordinated strategic plan.
Without heavy armor, these defenders possessed immense speed, maneuverability, and intimate knowledge of the terrain.
The same Arminius united these rival clans, turning tribal hatred into a singular weapon against Rome.
As autumn storms began to brew, rumors of a local tribal rebellion reached the Roman command.
Commander, the scouts report activity ahead.
The same Varus dismissed the warnings, believing his massive army could easily crush any local resistance.
The path ahead is safe and secure. We will proceed.
Trusting his advisor, the governor ordered his legions to divert into the dense northern wilderness. Cold wind began to howl as dark clouds completely blocked the afternoon sun. A heavy, persistent autumn rain began to fall, soaking the heavy wool and leather gear.
The clay ground rapidly transformed into thick, slippery mud, halting the heavy supply wagons.
With the trap successfully set, Arminius quietly departed the Roman ranks forever.
Now miles long, the vulnerable Roman column was completely fragmented by the thick, unforgiving forest. Slippery conditions grew worse as relentless rain turned the narrow pathway into a swamp. Soldiers broke their tight marching ranks to physically push heavy baggage through the mire. Commanders struggled to maintain order as communication between the distant units rapidly broke down. High above the muddy path, silent Germanic warriors watched and waited for the perfect moment.
Trained in swift ambush tactics, the tribal warriors prepared to strike the disorganized Roman line. A tense, suffocating silence hung in the wet air just before the storm broke.
Suddenly, a deafening war cry erupted from the darkness, shattering the forest's silence.
Germanic forces advanced rapidly down the muddy slopes, preparing to strike the exposed Roman column.
Legionaries instinctively raised their heavy shields, but the sudden attack caught them completely unprepared.
Terrified horses reared and threw their riders as chaos engulfed the narrow forest path.
Overturned wagons blocked the road, completely trapping the marching soldiers between the ancient trees.
Form a square, you dogs! Form a defensive line! Move faster!
Desperate officers attempted to form defensive circles, but the dense undergrowth prevented any cohesion.
Tribal forces confronted the line swiftly, before melting back into the impenetrable mist. Struggling to find an enemy, the panicked soldiers fired blind volleys into the dense foliage.
The Romans quickly realized they were not fighting a battle, but surviving a slaughter.
The downpour intensified, soaking Roman shields and making them too heavy to lift effectively. Small groups formed defensive walls, but their legendary discipline was slowly being ground away.
Tribal warriors relentlessly hammered the defensive lines, exploiting every gap in the Roman shield wall.
Roman cavalry tried to maneuver, but the wet tree roots and mud crippled their horses.
Keep formation! We must push through! The trail is narrowing! Protect the commander!
Even as soldiers fell, dedicated standard-bearers fought fiercely to keep the Golden Eagles upright. The confrontation degenerated into an intense, claustrophobic struggle where individual endurance was the ultimate test.
Germanic warriors used their light equipment to easily outmaneuver the exhausted, heavily laden legionaries.
Slipping on the crimson-stained clay, many Roman soldiers were overwhelmed before they could react. By nightfall, the once mighty legions were divided into isolated pockets of desperate resistance. The very earth seemed to turn against Rome as the mud swallowed marching soldiers. Exhausted and freezing, the soldiers dragged their wounded through freezing swamps and deep marshlands. Sinking under the relentless rain, the baggage train was completely abandoned to the elements. Every hill became a deadly barrier, as wet mud caused the soldiers to lose footing.
The Germanic forces launched rolling logs and heavy boulders down from the elevated forest ridges.
Blinding rain and thick mist reduced visibility to just a few feet, fueling intense paranoia. Physical exhaustion set in, as the heavy armor became a suffocating, waterlogged burden. The battlefield was no longer a road, but a chaotic, waterlogged graveyard stretching for miles.
Reports of absolute devastation continued to reach the central command post throughout the night.
Commanders argued over their next move, but every path led deeper into the enemy's trap.
The same Varus watched with solemn concern as the pride of Rome's military withered away. With every hour, more Germanic tribes joined the coalition, sensing an historic, absolute victory. The remaining 3 legions attempted to coordinate, raising their battle-worn standards in desperation.
Determined to break through, the same Varus prepared for one final, desperate march forward.
They marched forward in a defensive column, hoping to find open ground and safety.
But the same Arminius anticipated their movement, waiting at the narrowest pass of Kalkriese. The Romans arrived to find a massive, pre-built Germanic earthen wall blocking their path.
From behind the heavy fortifications, the same Arminius unleashed the full force of his coalition.
Legionaries desperately tried to storm the barrier, but were thrown back into the mud. Tribal warriors surged over the wall, crashing directly into the front ranks of Rome. Shields shattered and iron weapons clashed in the most brutal engagement of the entire battle. Isolated and outnumbered, the remaining Roman cavalry was dragged down and systematically destroyed. The 3 standard-bearers stood their ground, fighting to protect the sacred symbols of Rome. Surrounded on all sides, the surviving soldiers fought back-to-back in the pouring rain.
As a violent autumn storm peaked, all strategic organization within the legions finally collapsed.
Panic spread like wildfire as terrified men broke ranks and fled into the dark forest. There was no escape as swift tribal forces pursued the scattered, retreating survivors. One by one, the golden eagles of Legio 77, X the 8th, and Xe 9 fell. With broken weapons and heavy hearts, the last soldiers fought with the energy of despair. The remaining pockets of Roman resistance were systematically surrounded by the unstoppable tribal advance. The massive Roman column was completely destroyed, its remnants left to burn in the rain. Sensing the absolute end, the same Varus stood alone amidst the ruins of his army. To avoid the immense shame of capture, the governor chose the traditional Roman path. With a final, desperate act, Varus fell upon his own sword. The Roman command structure was completely dismantled, leaving the survivors without any leadership. A haunting silence slowly descended over the vast, blood-soaked forests of ancient Germania. 3 entire legions had been completely wiped from the face of the earth.
The lost numbers of these 3 legions were never used by Rome again.
The Rhine became a permanent border, halting Rome's northern expansion for centuries to come.